Sporty greetings. Welcome to VOA's AFCON podcast. I'm your host, Kahli Abdu. Joining me in the studio are my esteemed colleagues, Sonny Young, Muqbil Yabarow, Sam Sasu, and Mike Hove of Bafana
The
Bafana.
one and only gentleman,
Hey.
Bafana Bafana, man.
Hey, talk to
Listen,
me, Mike. What's going on?
Yesterday I saw a beautiful celebration, all like this, praying, commemorating Cristiano Ronaldo, that payback, that lick back that Bafana Bafana
that was
did.
epic.
It was beautiful. It was really an amazing football match to watch. Tense for any South African fan. When I saw Hakimi take that penalty, your heart is beating every moment of. I swear I thought I was a player for a second, man. But when he clipped that post and it went up, you could see the momentum shift in favor of Bafana Bafana. It was a beautiful game to watch, but it's something I'm looking forward to.
Sam, he mentioned the penalty miss. That penalty miss reminds you of something.
Talk
to me.
Me being a Ghanaian, full in heart. So we go back to South Africa for the World Cup versus Uruguay. One of our top leading goal scorers for the nation, Asamoah Gyan. We had the same type of moments.
Yeah.
You know, that penalty comes down to, can you have the composure to put it in the back of the net
Yeah.
to see your nation go forward? So, when I'm actually watching the match, I'm just having, flashbacks of that entire moment. So it happens, though. It gets to the best of all footballers.
I was having this conversation with Sonny early on. Why do they always give it to the, I guess we'll call it the leadership of the team, like the player that they think? Because sometimes those players are not the ones who have the momentum behind them.
That's true. I think it comes down to the belief of the team. And a lot of times you have those individual players that kind of carry the team in a sense. And especially within a lot of these African nations, we have those individual talents that people look to kind of see those moments through. But realistically, it takes a lot of composure.
Yeah.
You have to find the most composed, footballer on the pitch to kind of take that penalty, to kind of seal those moments out, because you've seen it. You've seen it within the African Cup of Nations. You've seen it in
World
Champions
Cup,
League. You've seen it
everywhere.
all over, Premier League, La Liga, all of that. Those players that don't have the composure, those moments either define their career or break them.
Yeah. We'll come back to that in a second. Let's talk to my colleague, Muqbil, who was on the ground in AFCON. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Amazing scenes, from there. Talk to us about what you saw in Ivory Coast.
Man, Ivory Coast to me was it was such a vibe, bro. Like it was like the Ivorians are to me some of the best hosts possible. They really showcase what it means to showcase hospitality across the board. You know what I mean? Their food was amazing. The weather was great, But on top of that, their love for the game of football and their want for Les Elephants to continue in their conquest to win this tournament is huge, man. So for them, if this game that we're talking about right now, the Moroccans really allowed them to get into the tournament, to further in the tournament because of that win against Zambia.
Yeah.
So it was really a very quiet Ivory Coast. I know in Abidjan, some of my friends that are there said that in the stadium, first off, you couldn't hear nothing. After Hakimi misses that penalty kick, it is like silence. You don't think. And there was a huge Moroccan fan base that were there in the stadium, but they were quiet after that because they really knew that late in the game you missed that. And it coming from somebody like Hakimi, as you guys were just talking about right now, to me, he's a great person to have in that spot because he's shown time and time again that he does have the composure to make it happen for his team. Just unfortunate, it's like a game of, chance, really, when it comes to PKs. You're going to eventually miss.
Yeah.
So it just so happened that he missed in a moment where his team
pressure.
would have much loved to push them through because, like we said, if he goes and scores that, Sofiane Amrabat doesn't do what he does out of frustration, it's a completely different game. So, yeah, man, I'm definitely excited, though, to see the minnows really showcasing that they are in the waters with the sharks and they're really, showing themselves. The blue sharks of Cape Verde, you know what I mean? Like the likes of certain teams, the Bafana Bafanas of the world. But interestingly enough, Bafana Bafana did already beat Morocco AFCON qualifiers.
Right.
2-1. So it's not like this is the first go around. They said, we did this once. We can do it again. So,
in terms of the surprising teams in the tournament, though, in the span of 24 hours, we saw Morocco go out and Senegal, the defending champion, go out. And, just based on that, it's been an exciting tournament.
Yeah, speaking of Bafana Bafana, South Africa beating Morocco, you seem to be their Achilles heel. You're beating them over and over and over again. What's that
Listen,
about?
so I was actually saying this to Sonny that it's interesting how this is actually turning into a rivalry without even noticing it, right? Because Bafana Bafana and Morocco have played each other several times, and it's like a lick back, a tit for tat. Every single time Morocco plays well, Bafana Bafana somehow comes back.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a draw, but it's turning into an interesting rivalry, which I'm really intrigued by. I was talking to Sonny earlier on about what we're now thinking of when we talk about, like, for example, FIFA rankings. I'm like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
At some point, Morocco was ranked as the highest team on the continent.
Right.
Bafana Bafana is nowhere in the top, in that vicinity of like top 5 teams on the continent. But somehow they have this rivalry going on, tit for tat. They play back. For me, that was really interesting. But that aside, I was talking to Sonny also about the squad for Bafana Bafana. Something I did point out earlier on is how a lot of the players have been playing together for a very long time. A lot of them play together for Mamelodi Sundowns. Some of them play alongside when they go for national squads because they play for Orlando Pirates. Coach Hugo Broos really went for a local squad, which I wouldn't even lie. I was among the people who really raised the question about that because I'm like, some of these players need international exposure. You're playing against players in Europe, etc.
Yeah.
But it's somehow working out.
Mike, Broos was quoted after that victory over Morocco saying that Bafana Bafana needs to dream of
Final.
making it to the final.
Dreams and nightmares.
Do you think they can? Do you think they can lift the trophy?
It's very possible. It's starting to look good. I mean, that's not to take away from the fact that the Blue Sharks are playing like amazing football. It's a really, so by no chance should Bafana Bafana walk into that game thinking it's a walk in the park.
Yeah.
Which I don't think they are. I mean, they seem to have taken their approach towards AFCON a little different. Throughout that whole time, I've seen them play well as a team. I've seen them take their opposition very seriously. We saw how they played against Tunisia. They massacred them, and the same applied when they played. They drew to Tunisia,
Yeah,
but
Namibia.
Namibia, yes.
Yeah.
So for me, you can see that Bafana Bafana's approach towards this is a little different. Now, the reasoning behind that, obviously, I'll speak from for a South African standpoint, is that I think they're out to prove a point. Bafana Bafana has always been seen, and I called them this myself, the black sheep of the family. You saw the Springboks excelling, the Proteas have excelled. So everybody looks at Bafana Bafana like, gents, come on, man, come on. You have to do something.
Do something.
You know?
So they do have a point to prove.
They have a point to prove.
And they're playing like it.
They're playing as though they are out there to win. So it's really intriguing. But before we navigate that, I want us to hear what Sonny brought up, our coach Hugo Broos. So let's head over to a statement he gave out earlier on where he was speaking on Bafana Bafana, the game against Morocco, and of course what it's looking like for them as they head into the quarterfinals. So let's hear what he had to say, and then we'll come back and unpack more.
I don't think that I have to tell you that I'm very happy today. We beat Morocco. And it's not only because we are in the quarterfinals, but beating a team like Morocco is something special. This is a very good team with very good players, but we did the right analysis. And the way we played, the tactic was the right one. I got a lot of critics in South Africa, a certain moment, because of the choices I made. But I knew what I was doing. I know the results have to follow. And even with local players now, you see they play on that high level. When they have the confidence, they can do it. And this is very important for the South African football, that we are making good performances here on such a big tournament. They fight from the first minute. They played very disciplined. And we knew that we wouldn't have 4, 5, 6 or 10 chances today against this team. But when we had a chance, we had to use it. And we did. And that was very important today, that few chances we had, that we could score.
Well, we heard there from Coach Hugo Broos, the South African coach, Belgian gentleman, 71-year-old. They're leading Bafana Bafana through to the quarterfinals, something that a lot of people really criticized him for having a local team. He spoke on that. He said, I'm out to prove you wrong, gents. So let's really unpack more of this, guys. Kahli, you were talking about looking at the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
I wanted to get your all of you guys, which game stood out, to you? We have some high-scoring games. 2 of the games went to PKs. But all in all, they were very, very entertaining games. Sam, let's start with you. Which game stood out for you?
Wow, a lot of good games. So far, for me, it has to be Senegal versus Ivory Coast. That match in itself. When you talk about African football, there's a stigmatism amongst the nations in the continent that we don't know how to play football that well. We don't keep up with, possession-style football. We don't know how to build out. And in that game, you saw it all. You saw the build-out, you saw the possession, but also you saw the risk-taking from that middle third to final third. And in that game alone, yes, you had quite a bit of foul, 26 fouls for Ivory Coast, 25 for Senegal. But altogether, you had a lot of shot attempts on goal. And that made a bigger difference in the match because then you can actually see the teams are actually pushing for that win,
But those fouls also speak to the physicality of the game.
Yeah,
That's
it was
true.
very physical.
Right.
So Ivory Coast played with a lot of energy. Muqbil, you were down there. Ivory Coast started on fire, then it kind of went downhill, right?
Kinda.
It did.
Water.
No, I'd say kind of.
You know.
Because realistically speaking, the one game that may have stood out to a lot of people is that Equatorial Guinea game.
Yep.
But in actuality, they had 22 shots in that
Yeah,
game.
exactly.
So what I've been saying is from time that Ivory Coast has shown that they are really good at every third except for the final third. So it's like they're doing everything that they need to do to get their team in the best possible position to score, and it is the responsibility of the attacking players to knock it down because there's been ample opportunities for them, and they've been at the very front, right in front of goal, and have not been able to manage to score. So I think with the firing of Coach Gassett, I think with this new core in, what it showed me is that it gave them a different sense of belonging. And I also feel like because they were like the very last team to make it to the knockout phase, they got rewarded by playing the defending champions, they felt as though we literally have nothing to prove anymore. There are no expectations on us. Everyone thinks we're dead in the water. So let's come out and actually prove to ourselves more than anything else that we belong in this tournament. Not only are we hosts, but we belong to be in here. And not only did they show that, they showed a great thing. And right before we cut off, we spoke about this yesterday. And what I feel like is that game could have been completely different in the direction for them if Sadio Mane gets that red.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That is a huge call. And I've been a huge proponent in saying that like officiating and VAR has been excellent in this tournament. I think that was one of the calls that maybe looked at like, I like the call in hindsight simply because it let Ivory Coast win on their own terms.
Right.
If that call happens right after the goal,
It'll be all about that.
It'll be all about it, and they would not have gotten the respect that they deserve to win. So they won it on their own merits, and I like the call after the fact.
Yeah. Sonny, Senegal, Egypt, Morocco, knocked out. Who saw that coming?
I certainly didn't.
Nightmares continue, gentlemen.
boy.
Yeah. In terms of teams that are gone, no North African teams
You're
left. All 5 African teams that qualified for the World Cup in 2022, they're all gone.
That's
And I think it speaks to the growth of African football.
Yeah.
That that we're seeing some of these smaller teams.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Yeah, speaking about you, just on your point, the African teams that are utilizing the funds that are coming in, it's showing, isn't it? We're seeing teams like Cape Verde, we're seeing, Angola. It seems like they're utilizing these funds the way that it should, and that's contributing to the success that we're seeing on the pitch, isn't it?
Yeah, I think funds play a role into that. Obviously, it builds into the facilities that they have, the resources that they're able to have for the football clubs. But I think the biggest thing that we're seeing out of this particular Cup of Nations is that these teams that have made it by so far, if you watch how they interact, how they play for the badge, and more importantly,
They like each other.
Yes, they get along very well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that's something that speaks to a lot of these teams that are in this, last couple matches that are going on to this, qualifying matches, because you have to start thinking about, okay, how did they get through against these teams that are on paper should be
Better
just
than them.
Right.
run in to just make it to this point of the tournament. I mean, think about it. You have Cape Verde. Nobody was seeing Cape Verde coming up this far at all.
Yeah.
You know, but the fact that they have a good camaraderie around their squad, they understand what needs to be taking place on the field, but they understand the pride for their badge. I think that makes a big difference as well.
I was thinking about this. We were looking at the players from Cape Verde, and out of 55, only maybe 7 play elsewhere. The rest of them all play at home.
Yep.
I wonder if for a big team, you know, you're analyzing who are their star players, who's capable of doing what. When you haven't really heard of some of these guys before, you know, does that play into it where you're facing a team as opposed to individuals?
So I think it goes to 2 points, right? One of them is the pride, right? Is a lot of these teams stepping into it. Some of them aren't scared. They're like, we have nothing, absolutely nothing to lose at this point. Let's play it all and leave it all on the field. If we lose, so be it. We played our best. But at the very least, at the very best, we walk off this field as winners. And I think we've seen that mentality time and time and time again with all these small teams or so-called small teams. Once again, I don't want to keep bringing it back to Bafana, but that's one thing. I know some of the players, and some of them did say that before they played Bafana, and I was like, gents, it's the Atlas Lions. Come on, semi-finalists. They're like, no, listen, my friend, we've played these guys before.
We know them.
We know them. And aside from that, they know themselves as a team. They say, we have nothing to lose. At the very least, worst case scenario is we go back and people go, Bafana lost again. But best case scenario is we walk off as winners. And
Heroes, man.
And they so are heroes right now. It really is intriguing to see how people are embracing Bafana. This is a wave that I have not seen in a very long time. I mean, I've been a Bafana fan, but even I had my skepticism when we started this conversation, and I said Bafana wouldn't have made it out the group. At the very least, they would have made it a third best.
You know what I think, though? I also feel as though it's kind of like a role reversal, right? So, like, you have teams like the Senegals and the Moroccos of the world that now feel like how Morocco felt, you know, or like how Spain and Portugal felt when they were in the World Cup. So when your mentality now switches because the top 6 teams coming into AFCON, 5 of them are North African teams, you're expecting to come out of this and you're looking at these other teams as less than. But when you play Spain and Portugal, you play up to competition. You're punching up in weight, right? So I think what happened is, and Senegal, unfortunately, I think Senegal was the only team that got knocked out that didn't have that mentality. But they actually played, but it just it wasn't their day, you know, because throughout the group stages they were running through everyone and they were playing with that ability. Like, look, we don't care if you're if you're 100 ranked or if you're ranked number 1, we're gonna give you everything we have. And they tried with Ivory Coast, but Ivory Coast may not look great on paper, man. But when them boys play, they are different, man. They're just as athletic as Senegal. They're just as fast. It's just that, you know, their finishing just wasn't that great, but they controlled the tempo and the pace of the game towards the end. And I think Morocco kind of like came into that first initial game and beat down Tanzania 3-0 and felt like they were going to do that to everybody. And when DRC gave them that physicality, they decided, well, maybe this is going to be a little different, you know? So, you know, they were a lot more physical and a lot stronger and a lot faster than the Spains and the Portugals because those teams play tactically. But when you played some of these sub-Saharan teams, they're more physical than you possibly, faster, more athletic. And just now as because technicality and the way that the game is played today across the continent is like everybody is technical. It's no longer how it once upon a time used to be, just boot the ball to, what were we saying, to JJ back in the day and let him work.
Quick question for Coach Sam. Morocco was the first team to arrive in Ivory Coast outside the host country and the last North African team to be eliminated. Do you see the geography playing into this, that you know, you have North African teams coming into a hotter climate? I remember, you know, we've seen all those cooling breaks they've been having during the matches. Do you think that affected them?
I think weather plays a big role in football, especially when you're going from a major climate change where you're kind of going from cool temperatures to like massive heat and you have humidity on top of that. For the local teams that are in that particular region of Africa, it's easier for them to kind of stay hydrated and kind of have their bodies adjust to the temperatures and the climate in that region. But for those Northern African countries that are coming in, it's a little bit difficult because sometimes if you look at it even from like club standpoint, a lot of club football, when they have to travel to those climates, they'll actually go there maybe a week ahead of time to get acclimated for that, those temperature gauges and everything. But I think, with the tournament being so quick and a lot of these players are coming back from, the UK, Paris, Germany, and playing in those leagues, coming back into that, massive heat, your body doesn't adjust that quickly. By the time it adjusts, it's either you're down, 1-0 or 2-0, and you have to find your way back somehow with, your legs straggling along. So I think the climate does play a role.
Let's dig into the North African teams a bit more. We all expected so much. We're talking about Mo Salah. We're talking about Mahrez. We're talking about the Moroccan team, from Qatar. There's just so much anticipation for them. And then all of them just are not in the quarterfinals. What is it? You're a coach, Sam. What is it about the teams? Is it that they didn't play as well, or is it that the teams that beat them just played better than them? Is it one of those things where
it can be broken down from a coaching standpoint? I look at it from this. When you're managing a football club or managing an international team of football, you have to make sure, one, that there's an equal level of camaraderie there, because I think that's where it has to start. Because when you start building a program and you're building a football identity for your nation, you can't have the individuals as what people look to, because then when those individuals don't capitalize like we saw in Morocco, who do we depend on at that point then?
Yeah.
Because then the team is like, oh my gosh, he couldn't finish that shot.
Yeah.
What now?
What do we do now? How do we get back? Because now we're in panic mode. Because our so-called, star player, the guy, the number one, the star boy, he didn't finish. What do we do now? Because we saw that. We've seen that in most African teams. We've seen that. I'll use Ghana as an example. We saw that with Asamoah Gyan back in.
Okay, what now?
What do we do?
To your point, Nigeria kind of struggled in their first game against Equatorial Guinea, where you remember you were there. Osimhen missed that chance, and the team looked like
what now?
Yeah, what do we do now? But
his turnaround was great though.
Yes.
So what Osimhen did, and a lot of star players don't necessarily do sometimes, is that they like he said that I am here for the badge and I am just a member of this team.
Correct.
So he kind of downplayed himself and said, look, it's not the Osimhen show. This is the Nigeria show, right? Yeah. So when you do that and he actually believes it, which I love, you can just say it and it's lip service. But when he said it, he meant it. And you could see after that game, the upward trajectory of Nigeria, because even in their locker room, he's amongst the guys. He doesn't have his private driver driving him around. He's on the bus with the guys. He's playing with them. So when you have that level of camaraderie, now I can respect it, because it's not about how much money I have. We are all doing this for the same reason. And that's why he also didn't take his PK too. The PK,
I did see that.
Right? He said, look, this is our captain. He's going to take it. But I'm behind him.
That's why it went back to what I said, is that at times the star player shouldn't be the one to take it, because he's not the one with the momentum.
No. Right.
There should be, sometimes you don't even need a designated. Sometimes there's that player who just has the momentum. This is his day.
But with Morocco, though, Hakimi was creating opportunities. The problem with it was who else? Ziyech is out. He's not playing, right? Nasri is not really playing. He got no touches. Saiss is the captain, but he really doesn't kick for real. Like, so where would I go?
But I think that's the thing. That's where it comes down to that football identity, right? If you're not prepared, you'll never be ready. You know what I mean? So I think it's up to the manager of the club to cut, or the nation per se, to kind of build that into their practices, because you can't, just like you said, you don't want to put the identity on one person. You notice how sometimes when these teams come out, it's Mo Salah and Egypt, or Cristiano Ronaldo and Portugal. That's, you separate that. Now you already put that in the mind of the players as well. Like, it's Ronaldo's here. We got to always go through Ronaldo. We got to go through Mo Salah.
But I think the difference in it is that Hakimi is not a striker, right?
He's not.
And by him not being a striker and still being the designated penalty kicker, I think it just means that he just needs to be, like in basketball, the technical foul happens, we all know Steph Curry's got to take that shot. Like, it has to still be somebody. And I think Morocco has enough stars that it's not the Hakimi show. It just so happened to be amplified that day because Ziyech and Boufal are gone.
Yeah.
So it's like it kind of like ended up being his show, even though it really wasn't supposed to be.
Yeah.
I still like him taking the PK because he has knocked down some really good
He's
ones.
done it. He's done it at a club level.
Yeah.
You've seen him do it at PSG.
Even in the World Cup, though,
Right.
he
did.
He got one down
He did.
against Spain.
Right, but it comes
Yeah.
down to, once again,
Yeah.
you gotta watch him stepping up. Where were the nerves at that point?
Oh, yeah, he
where's
was
the
nervous.
where's the concentration? Because I think you have to understand, taking a penalty, you can do it so many times at practice,
Yeah.
and you can
But
net
when it's
9 out of 10.
Yeah.
But when the
Different
pressure
story.
sets in, the
When
fans
the
are coming
fans are
out,
shout-
and you
oh.
realize the moment.
Yeah.
I think that
I have a question for you, Sam.
Okay.
Who would you have rather him taken on that specific team in that moment right there? They all ran
one
to give
else.
him the ball.
They all gave him the
gave
ball.
him the
Yeah.
ball. Where would they have?
I know, I understand
You
that,
know?
but I think that's something that it kind of comes down to that once again. Let's go back to just sidetrack a bit. Let's think about the Euros when Ronaldo and Portugal were in the Euros taking spot kicks for that final.
Yeah.
I believe it was Silva.
Yeah.
It was Silva, right? Was it
That,
Silva?
that he gave the PK to?
That he didn't want to take a PK. Either it was Silva or
and
Fernandez.
then Ronaldo told him
He had to
you
take
have
it.
to take it.
Yes,
yeah,
you have to
yeah,
take it.
Yeah,
I can't remember the player's
yeah.
name, but it comes down to that moment where you have to be able to have confidence in other players to step up in those big moments to take those spot kicks.
Kahli, quick question on the fans.
Yeah.
I understand there's a very large Nigerian community in Ivory Coast.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like 3 million Nigerians
Yeah.
that live in the
Yeah.
country. Do you see them rallying behind the Super Eagles
Yeah,
as they get ready for Angola?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the Nigerian fans are, I think, maybe a bit too excited now, especially with Morocco going out. And I was telling you earlier, I keep reminding people of 1998. And, when we got knocked out of the World Cup by Denmark, when we were preparing for Brazil, when we hadn't faced Denmark yet, I'm telling Nigerians to be, cautious.
Level-headed.
Yes, Angola is a very strong team, very, very strong team, and we have to go into that game with our eyes open, and the fans will be there as always, cheering the team on. But I think that they're being too excited. They're thinking the Super Eagles have already lifted the tournament, and
Man,
I don't think it's just-
Mabalulu.
yeah.
Mabalulu. I was telling Sonny earlier. Man,
love that name.
Man, that boy has one of the best goals of the tournament.
Yeah.
So,
Describe it for us.
oh my God, he's leaning on the left. It's very Thierry Henry.
Yeah,
like,
very
so-
Thierry Henry.
so this kinda-
Speaking
They
of,
have to go with
yeah.
they have to
You know what I mean?
fund
It
it.
kind of worked, Henry would be proud. He's on the left side, kind of curls it in across the
No,
goalie. It was a beautiful
They
goal.
have some ballers. So now, gentlemen, looking forward, very, very interesting matchups.
Yeah.
What stands out, to you guys?
For me personally, it's two teams that I'm looking out for. Only because I think actually it's three teams. I'm looking out to see how the Super Eagles play. I like how they've revived that spirit. I think they're getting stronger every game. So it's really, I'm looking forward to seeing how that works out. Ivory Coast, they turned the entire, they flipped it upside down. They, at some point, the whole world, I was one of those people that was like, it's over for them.
Yeah.
And look at them now. And then, of course, Bafana Bafana, I'm really curious to see if they can relive that glory.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, we are all out of time. We can keep talking and talking and talking, but unfortunately, this is where we have to draw the line. My name is Kahli Abdu. Joining me,
Sonny.
Yes, Muqbil.
Samuel Sasu.
And of course, I'm Mike Hove. Once again, gentlemen, Bafana. We got to see how this works out. Let's do this. You tuned in to the third episode of Kick It AFCON, VOA Africa's podcast. Man, stay tuned. Follow us on voaafrica.com, our Facebook page, VOA Africa. Keep watching Kick It AFCON.